night before she collapsed.
Rogers assures me she had nothing whatsoever.
Of course he would say that. But see here. They've done a murder and gotten away with it. Now she's all hysterical, likely to give the show away. She's a danger to her husband, that's what she is.
Oh, I should hardly think a man would do that to his wife.
You said you knew something about the history of this island.
Most of the old stuff can be found in the library. Its more recent history is just as interesting, though. But I'm not inclined to divulge that just yet.
Good day to you, Mr. Blore. Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death?
I'm sure Mrs. Rogers wasn't to blame. A good, loyal woman.
Did you hear anything in the night?
I thought I heard a voice calling my name. My wife, she died several years ago. I expect it was a dream.
General, you said you thought you recognized Lombard.
Did I? Yes, I expect I did. But I fail to see what business it might be of yours.
Good day to you, General. Perhaps this will grant the aging General increased mobility. Are you sure you can't tell me how you recognize Mr. Lombard?
Lombard, yes, he does look familiar. But the name is wrong. Or is it? I'm sorry, young man. My memory plays tricks on me.
Thank you, General. Stay well. Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death?
Conscience.
What do you mean by that?
She was accused, together with her husband, of having deliberately murdered her former employer, an old lady. You all saw her last night. She broke down completely. The shock of her wickedness brought home to her was too much to bear. She literally died of fear.
Possibly, if there was cardiac weakness.
Call it, if you prefer, an act of God.
Good day, Miss Brent. Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death?
We know that she consumed something last night. Dr. Armstrong told us so.
I, Mr. Lombard?
You gave her a sedative.
A small dose of Trianol, nothing more.
Doctors have made mistakes before.
You're suggesting I accidentally gave Mrs. Rogers an overdose?
Accidentally or otherwise. One death may have been an accident or suicide, but two in the space of a few hours?
Simply outrageous, man of my standing.
Any more questions, Mr. Narracott?
Did you hear anything in the night?
I'm a very light sleeper. In future, I hope everyone will bear that in mind. Yes, several times I heard something.
You didn't investigate?
With a judge, a detective, and an amateur sleuth in the house, you hardly need my poor skills in that line. I prefer to keep watch.
The hunter in his blind?
A good analogy, Judge.
You said you recognized Owen's voice.
I've had time to think it over, and I'm sure I did. I see no reason to share that information with you.
Good day to you, Mr. Lombard. What was the cause of death?
Impossible to say offhand.
There must be an autopsy.
I certainly couldn't give a certificate without one.
When did you find out?
Rogers roused me at first light. He'd gotten up to light the stove and see to the power generator before waking her. When she didn't respond, he got me.
Can you tell when she died?
Without an autopsy, not for certain, but it must have been some hours ago. The body was, quite cold.
Did you hear anything in the night?
No, although it appears I should have.
If you'll excuse me, Doctor. Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death, Judge?
I'm afraid it confirms my opinion that there is something very wrong on this island. It occurs to me that if these two deaths were not suicides or accidents, that Mr. Owen may very well be responsible. If so, he is almost certainly on this island somewhere.
I agree. I think we should find a way off this island immediately.
Did you hear anything in the night?
I confess I slept fitfully. Marsden's death, the storm, but I heard nothing. Possibly also due to the storm.
Understandable, Judge. Quite understandable.
Mr. Narracott, can your boat be repaired?
I doubt very seriously it can be repaired. Mr. Blore did a good job.
Steady on. I didn't know then how the land lay, did I?
So you say.
If you find a means of leaving the island or of signaling the mainland, I'm sure we would all be in your debt.
And I'm sure all of us would help in any way we could.
Here.
We're never going to leave the island. None of us are ever going to leave.
What were you hinting at concerning Marston's politics?
Only that he'd become mixed up with some foreigners. I think that's all I'd better say at present.
I am grateful for your assistance, Judge Wargrave. Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death?
She was a very skittish creature. And she had a shock last night. It might have been heart failure.
Her heart certainly failed to beat. What caused it to fail is the question.
Did you hear anything in the night?
No, my sleep was quite restful.
Much obliged for your assistance, Miss Claythorne.
Chapter 3. 8 little sailor boys traveling in Devon. One said he'd stay there, and then there were 7.
Rogers didn't let his wife's death get in the way of his custodial duties. I assume everyone has gone off on their own pursuits. I should do the same.
I asked Rogers what this Miss Brady had suffered from. In a certain form of cardiac trouble, when an attack comes on, an ampule of amyl nitrate is broken and inhaled. If amyl nitrate were withheld...
I see. No positive action must be taken. No arsenic to obtain and administer. Nothing definite at all.
And nothing could be proved against Rogers or his wife.
It explains our situation here quite neatly. There are crimes that cannot be brought home to their perpetrators by the usual methods.
A judge taking advantage of his position? No offense, Judge.
A doctor under the influence letting a scalpel slip? No offense, Doctor. The point is, it explains Mr. Unknown. He has, for reasons only he knows, decided to seek justice for certain crimes as he sees them.
And who among us is the only one that stands unaccused?
Ah, Mr. Narracott, right on cue.
Have you seen any of the others?
Before we came in here, I saw Miss Brent knitting on the patio as if she hadn't a care in the world.
Could you perform an autopsy on Mrs. Rogers?
I could, sir, but I won't. As Mr. Lombard so helpfully pointed out, it might be thought I had something to do with her death. It would be unethical for me to operate.
How much Trianol is missing from your supply?
I wouldn't know. I left the bottle with Rogers in case his wife required a second draft.
If you'll excuse me, Doctor. Have you seen any of the others?
I believe Mr. Blore and Mr. Lombard are off searching the island for Mr. Owen.
You didn't want to join them?
They are men accustomed to physical activity. I prefer to search for the truth with my mind.
Me too.
You think they'll find Mr. Owen?
Not in the sense you mean.
Where would you search for Mr. Owen?
Closer to home.
Any idea how we can get off the island?
I've allowed you to continue your own investigations, Mr. Narracott, because I disagree that being the odd man out makes you more suspect. On the contrary. But I've given you a good deal of advice already. It would be well if you thought for yourself for a while and let us get on with our game.
I am grateful for your assistance, Judge Wargrave.
Nice to have a break in the weather, although I don't expect it will last.
You don't seem concerned by the 2 deaths.
I remember a text that hung in my nursery as a child. Be sure thy sin will